The Galactic Confederation had always prided itself on being a peaceful organization. For over 3,000 years, the 12 member species had worked together to bring order and civilization to the galaxy. They settled disputes through discussion, shared resources freely, and welcomed new species with open arms. Violence was something they had left behind long ago. So when their deep space monitoring stations picked up strange radio signals from a small yellow star, the Council of Enlightened Species was excited. New radio waves meant a new species was developing technology. This was always a wonderful moment for the Confederation. They would send a diplomat, offer membership, and guide another species toward enlightenment. The signals came from the third planet of a system the new species called Sol. The planet was called Earth. The radio transmissions were primitive but showed promise. The beings called themselves humans. They seemed to enjoy something called music and sent many signals about sports and news programs. Ambassador Veltar of the Crystalline Hegemony was chosen for the mission. He was perfect for first contact situations. His species looked like living gems that changed colors with their emotions. Most new species found them beautiful and non-threatening. Veltar had helped welcome 6 other species into the Confederation over his long career. The humans appear to be in their early technological phase, Veltar reported to the Council before leaving. Their radio signals suggest they have basic electronics and are just beginning to explore space. They should be grateful for our guidance, the Council agreed. The humans would need help like all primitive species. They would need to learn proper population control, peaceful conflict resolution, and resource management. Most importantly, they would need to understand that violence had no place in civilized society. Veltar's ship, the Crystal Harmony, was small but elegant. It sparkled like a jewel as it traveled through hyperspace toward the Sol system. The ship carried gifts for the humans, basic medical technology, educational materials about galactic society, and beautiful crystals from Veltar's homeworld. In return, the humans would need to accept Confederation guidance and give up any dangerous military technology they might have developed. The journey took 3 weeks. During this time, Veltar studied everything the Confederation knew about humans. Their radio signals showed they had many different groups and languages. They seemed to fight among themselves often, which was unfortunate but expected from a primitive species. Once they joined the Confederation, such barbaric behavior would be stopped. When the Crystal Harmony dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, Veltar expected to find a quiet solar system with one inhabited planet. Instead, his sensors immediately began screaming warnings. The space around him was full of artificial objects. Massive metal structures orbited several planets and large asteroids. Ships moved between these structures in organized patterns. This cannot be right, Veltar said to himself, checking his instruments again. The radio signals they had intercepted were supposed to be from a primitive civilization, but what he saw looked like an advanced industrial system. Before he could study the situation further, 3 large ships appeared near his vessel. They were dark gray and angular, completely different from the smooth, curved ships of Confederation species. Strange symbols were painted on their hulls, and weapons ports were clearly visible along their sides. A communication signal reached his ship. The voice was harsh and direct, speaking in broken galactic standard. "Unknown vessel, you are in Terran space. State your identity and purpose immediately." Veltar quickly activated his translator and responded in what he hoped was the human language called English. "Greetings. I am Ambassador Veltar of the Galactic Confederation. I come in peace to welcome your species to galactic civilization." There was a pause. Then the human voice replied, "Maintain your current position. Do not move or power up any systems. A diplomatic escort is being sent to guide you to the proper authorities." Veltar was confused by the human's military tone, but he obeyed. Soon a formation of 6 human ships surrounded his vessel. They were smaller than his ship, but looked much more dangerous. Their hulls were covered in armor plating and weapon systems. These were clearly warships, not exploration vessels. The human ships guided him toward the third planet. As they traveled deeper into the system, Veltar saw more and more evidence of advanced human civilization. Orbital stations the size of cities surrounded several planets. Asteroid mining operations stretched across the asteroid belt. Defense platforms bristled with weapons at key points throughout the system. How is this possible? Veltar wondered. The radio signals his people had intercepted showed a species that was just learning about electronics. But the humans he was seeing had technology that matched or exceeded most Confederation species. When they reached Earth orbit, Veltar gasped at what he saw. The planet was surrounded by a ring of orbital habitats and defense platforms. Hundreds of ships moved in organized traffic patterns. Space elevators stretched from the planet's surface to orbital stations. This was not a primitive world. This was the heart of a spacefaring civilization. The humans directed him to dock with a large orbital station. As his ship settled into the docking bay, Veltar noticed that even the civilian areas were heavily fortified. Blast doors, security checkpoints, and armed guards were everywhere. These humans lived like they expected war at any moment. A delegation of humans met him at the airlock. They wore military uniforms and carried weapons, though they kept them lowered in a gesture of peace. Their leader was a tall female with short gray hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see everything. "Ambassador Veltar," she said in perfect galactic standard. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force. Welcome to Earth space. We understand you wish to discuss diplomatic relations between your Confederation and humanity." Veltar was surprised by her military rank and direct manner. In the Confederation, all first contact was handled by civilian diplomats. The idea of a military officer conducting diplomacy was strange and somewhat disturbing. "Admiral Chen," he replied, his crystal body shifting to a polite blue color. "I am honored to meet you. However, I believe there has been some misunderstanding. I am here to offer your species membership in the Galactic Confederation. This is a great honor that will bring your people peace and prosperity." Admiral Chen's expression did not change. "I see. Perhaps we should discuss this in a more formal setting. Please follow me to the diplomatic conference room." As they walked through the station, Veltar was amazed by what he saw. The humans had artificial gravity technology, advanced computer systems, and materials science that rivaled anything in the Confederation. More disturbing were the signs of military preparation everywhere. Weapon storage areas, tactical displays showing ship positions throughout the system, and soldiers in powered armor patrolling the corridors. The conference room was large and impressive with a view of Earth below. But even here, Veltar noticed that the furniture could be quickly moved to create defensive positions, and the walls had hidden weapon ports. These humans thought about conflict in ways that no Confederation species had considered for thousands of years. Admiral Chen took a seat across from him and activated a recording device. "Please, Ambassador, tell us about this Confederation membership you're offering." Veltar felt confident again. This was familiar territory. The Galactic Confederation is a peaceful alliance of 12 species dedicated to bringing order and civilization to the galaxy. We offer your species the opportunity to join us and benefit from our advanced knowledge and technology. He activated a holographic display showing the Confederation territories. As you can see, we control a significant portion of this galactic sector. Membership would give humanity access to our trade networks, our scientific knowledge, and our peaceful way of life. Admiral Chen studied the display carefully. And what would be required of humanity in return? Nothing too difficult, Veltar assured her. Your species would need to accept Confederation oversight of your government and military forces. You would relocate your excess population to planets we designate for human settlement, and you would surrender any dangerous military technology to Confederation authorities for proper disposal. The room became very quiet. Admiral Chen's eyes grew cold. "I see. And if humanity declines this generous offer?" Veltar's crystal body shifted to a warning orange color. "That would be most unfortunate. The Confederation has a responsibility to maintain peace and order in this region of space. If a species refuses to join our peaceful alliance, we sometimes need to provide protective intervention for the good of all." Admiral Chen leaned back in her chair. "Ambassador Veltar, I think there are some things you need to understand about humanity." Admiral Sarah Chen stood and walked to the large window overlooking Earth. The planet below was a brilliant blue and white marble, but Veltar could see the glittering lights of orbital installations everywhere. This was not the primitive world the Confederation had expected to find. "Tell me, Ambassador," Chen said, without turning around, "what do your records say about human history?" Veltar consulted his datapad. "Your radio signals indicate a species with basic technology. You appear to have developed electronics and primitive spaceflight. Your broadcasts suggest you enjoy recreational activities and have various cultural groups." Chen finally turned back to face him. Those radio signals you intercepted were from over 200 years ago. Light-speed communications take time to cross interstellar distances. What you heard was humanity during our early space age. The crystal ambassador's body shifted to a confused purple color. 200 years? But that would mean that humanity has had 2 centuries to develop since those signals were sent. Chen activated a holographic display of her own. Let me show you what we've actually accomplished in that time. The display lit up with a 3-dimensional map of local space. Red dots marked human colonies, and green lines showed established trade routes. Veltar stared in shock. The map showed human presence on dozens of star systems within 50 light-years of Earth. Impossible, he whispered. The Confederation monitors this entire region. We would have detected such expansion. Would you? Chen asked. Your species seem to use very predictable hyperspace routes and communication frequencies. We learned to avoid them early in our expansion. We also learned that it's better to observe potential neighbors before introducing ourselves. She changed the display to show ship movements. Veltar watched in amazement as hundreds of human vessels moved between star systems. These were not small exploration ships. They were massive cargo haulers, passenger transports, and military vessels. We've been watching your Confederation for over 50 years, Chen continued. We know about your 12-member species, your peaceful philosophy, and your expansion patterns. We've also encountered 17 other species in our local neighborhood. 17 species? Veltar's crystal body was now flashing between several colors as his emotions shifted rapidly. The Confederation has no record of 17 species in this region. That's because you don't actually explore very much, Chen said bluntly. Your Confederation stays in safe, well-mapped areas and waits for other species to develop radio technology. You miss a lot of civilizations that way. She brought up another display showing various alien ships and space stations. Of the 17 species we've encountered, we established friendly relations with 12 of them. We have mutual defense pacts with 8, trade agreements with 10, and cultural exchange programs with 6. Veltar studied the images. Some of the alien designs were completely unknown to him. These were species the Confederation had never even discovered. What about the other 5 species? He asked nervously. Chen's expression grew cold. 3 of them attempted to invade human space. They learned that was a mistake. One species tried to raid our shipping lanes until we convinced them to find other targets. The 5th demanded that we surrender our colonies to them because they claimed this region of space as their territory. And what happened to them? They're all still around, but they've learned to respect human space. We don't start fights, Ambassador, but we finish them. Veltar was beginning to understand why the humans seemed so militaristic. They lived in a dangerous neighborhood and had learned to defend themselves. But surely they would see the benefits of Confederation protection. Admiral Chen, he said carefully. Perhaps there has been a misunderstanding. The Confederation could provide your species with the protection you clearly need. Our peaceful alliance has maintained order for thousands of years. Chen smiled, but it was not a warm expression. Protection from what? We've been handling our own security quite well. But surely you understand that independent military action leads to chaos. The Confederation has learned that central authority is necessary for true peace. Whose peace? Chen asked. Your records show that the Confederation has absorbed over 40 species in the past 1,000 years. In every case, the new species gave up their independence in exchange for protection and guidance. What happened to species that refused your generous offers? Veltar's crystal body shifted to a defensive red color. Some species require protective intervention before they understand the benefits of civilization. You mean conquest. We prefer the term guided integration, Veltar replied stiffly. Violence is sometimes necessary to prevent greater violence. Chen nodded slowly. I see. And you believe humanity needs this guidance? All primitive species do. Your military focus proves that you have not yet learned to live in peace. Admiral Chen walked back to her chair and sat down. When she spoke again, her voice was calm and professional, but there was steel underneath. Ambassador Veltar, I'm going to explain humanity's position very clearly. We appreciate your visit, and we're willing to establish diplomatic relations with the Confederation. We're happy to discuss trade agreements, cultural exchanges, and mutual cooperation. Veltar brightened. Excellent. Then you accept membership in the Confederation? No. The word was flat and final. We do not accept Confederation authority over human government. military forces, or territory. We will not relocate our population to worlds chosen by alien bureaucrats, and we will not surrender our military technology to anyone. The Crystal Ambassador's body flashed bright orange, but you must understand the consequences of such a decision. I understand them perfectly, Chen replied. You're threatening humanity with military action if we don't submit to your authority. It would be protective intervention, not military action, Veltar protested. The Confederation seeks only to bring peace to this region, Chen leaned forward. Let me tell you something about human history, Ambassador. We've spent the last 5,000 years fighting wars. We've fought for territory, resources, ideas, and survival. We've developed tactics, strategies, and weapons that your peaceful species have never imagined. She activated another display showing human military vessels. These ships were angular and predatory, covered in armor and bristling with weapons. They looked nothing like the elegant, curved vessels favored by Confederation species. We've also spent the last 2 centuries preparing for the possibility that we might encounter hostile alien civilizations. We've studied every piece of intelligence we could gather about potential threats. That includes your Confederation. Veltar stared at the warships on the display. They were larger and more heavily armed than anything in Confederation space. Surely you don't intend to threaten the Confederation? We don't threaten anyone who doesn't threaten us first, Chen said. But we don't back down from threats either. She stood up and walked to the window again. Ambassador, your Confederation has lived in peace for thousands of years because you've never encountered a species like humanity. You've only met civilizations that were either too weak to resist you or too isolated to challenge you. The Confederation represents 12 advanced species. 12 species that gave up their independence in exchange for safety, Chen corrected. How many of them still maintain their own military forces? How many could defend themselves if the Confederation central government collapsed? Veltar opened his mouth to reply, then closed it. The truth was that most Confederation species had reduced their military forces to symbolic levels centuries ago. The central government maintained a small peacekeeping fleet, but it was designed more for show than actual combat. You see the problem? Chen continued. Your Confederation has created a peaceful society by eliminating anyone who might disturb that peace. You've never had to deal with a species that could fight back effectively. She turned back to face him. Humanity will not submit to alien authority. We will not give up our independence, and we will not relocate our populations to worlds chosen by others. If the Confederation wants to establish relations with humanity, it will be as equals. Equals. Veltar's crystal body was now a deep red. The Confederation represents the combined wisdom of 12 species. Humanity is just one world with colonies on 43 others, a military that's been tested in actual combat, and allies who have learned to trust us because we keep our word. Chen replied. We're offering friendship, Ambassador. I suggest you consider whether that's more valuable than another conquered territory. Veltar stood up, his crystal body flashing angry colors. This is intolerable. The Confederation cannot allow such insubordination. There will be consequences for this arrogance. Admiral Chen's expression didn't change. I'm sure there will be. We'll be ready for them. As Veltar stormed out of the conference room, Chen activated her communicator. All fleet commanders, this is Admiral Chen. Initiate Protocol 7. Unknown hostiles may be approaching our territory. All ships to battle stations. Throughout human space, warships began moving into position. The emergency session of the Confederation Council was unlike anything in their recorded history. Representatives from all 12 member species gathered in the Great Crystal Amphitheater on the neutral world of Harmony Station. The air shimmered with translated languages as diplomats tried to make sense of Ambassador Veltar's shocking report. This is completely unacceptable, declared Speaker Thalnos of the Verdant Union, his plant-like body rustling with agitation. No primitive species has ever refused Confederation membership. It's unprecedented. Veltar's crystal form glowed with embarrassed orange hues as he stood at the center of the amphitheater. Honored speakers, I followed all proper protocols. I offered the humans the gift of civilization, explained the benefits of Confederation membership, and warned them of the consequences of refusal. They were completely unreasonable. Counselor Zixana of the Floating Mines pulsed thoughtfully in her containment field. Perhaps we misunderstood their development level. Did they seem to comprehend the magnitude of what they were rejecting? Oh, they understood perfectly, Veltar replied bitterly. They had the audacity to suggest that we should treat them as equals rather than the primitives they clearly are. A ripple of shocked gasps echoed through the chamber. The concept of treating a single-world species as equal to the mighty Confederation was absurd. Council Prime Yethmore of the Golden Scales raised one clawed hand for silence. As the senior member of the council, his words carried great weight. Veltar, describe their military capabilities. What level of threat do they actually pose? They have some warships, Veltar said dismissively. Crude angular things covered in weapons. Very primitive compared to our elegant designs. Their admiral spoke of fighting wars and preparing for hostile contact. But this is typical Deathworlder paranoia. Deathworlders, murmured Counselor Fexali of the Gentle Swimmers. Her aquatic species had never encountered such beings. Perhaps this explains their aggressive nature. Species from dangerous worlds often develop violent tendencies. High Speaker Morden of the Eternal Circles nodded sagely. The literature suggests that Deathworld species eventually overcome their violent nature once they achieve spaceflight. Perhaps these humans simply need more time to evolve past their primitive instincts. Time we cannot afford to give them, interjected War Speaker Koldash of the Iron Brotherhood. His species had been the Confederation's military arm before being absorbed 300 years ago. If they spread their violent philosophy to other species in the region, it could destabilize everything we've built. Council Prime Yethmore stood, his golden scales catching the light. The question before us is clear. Do we allow this aberration to continue, or do we fulfill our responsibility to maintain order in this region of space? Speaker Thalnos swayed urgently. Surely a small protective intervention would be sufficient. These humans cannot possibly stand against the combined might of the Confederation. What force would be required? Asked Councillor Zixana. Veltar consulted his datapad. Intelligence suggests they have perhaps 200 ships total, spread across their claimed territory. A standard peacekeeping fleet of 300 vessels should be more than adequate to convince them to accept our guidance. 300 ships seems excessive for one world, observed Councillor Fexali. Better to overwhelm them quickly than to allow the situation to escalate, Koldash argued. Swift action will minimize casualties on both sides. Council Prime Yethmore called for order. All those in favor of authorizing protective intervention to secure human compliance with Confederation authority? 11 hands, claws, tentacles, and energy fields rose in agreement. Only Councillor Fexali abstained. Motion carried. Fleet Commander HFY will lead the intervention force. Fleet Commander HFY of the Silver Fleet was considered one of the Confederation's finest naval officers. His species, the Metallic Harmony, were natural coordinators who excelled at managing large formations of ships. He had successfully overseen the integration of 3 previous species into the Confederation. Honored Council, HFY said, his silver form reflecting the chamber's lights. I recommend a demonstration of overwhelming force rather than immediate combat. If we arrive with sufficient numbers, the humans should surrender without significant bloodshed. Agreed, Council Prime Yethmore replied. You are authorized to use whatever force is necessary to secure human compliance, but civilian casualties should be minimized. What if they actually resist? Asked Koldash. HFY's metallic body chimed with amusement. Honored War Speaker, they are one species with primitive weapons facing the combined might of 12 advanced civilizations. Resistance would be brief and futile. The fleet assembled at Rally Point Sigma, just outside the nebula that concealed their approach to human space. 300 ships gathered in perfect formation, representing the finest vessels from all 12 Confederation species. The ships were beautiful works of art as much as instruments of war. The crystalline hegemony contributed vessels that looked like living gems, their faceted hulls refracting light in rainbow patterns. The Verdant Union's ships were grown rather than built, their organic curves flowing like living wood. The golden scales provided sleek predatory forms that spoke of ancient nobility, but beautiful as they were, these ships had never seen real combat. The Confederation had maintained peace for so long that warfare had become a theoretical concept. Their weapons were designed to disable rather than destroy. Their tactics focused on intimidation rather than battle. Fleet Commander HFY stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Harmonious Unity, and surveyed his forces with satisfaction. Never in Confederation history had such a fleet been assembled for a single operation. All ships, prepare for hyperspace transition to the human system, he commanded. Remember, we are not conquerors but liberators. We go to free the humans from their own primitive aggression and bring them into civilized society. The fleet disappeared into hyperspace, confident in their mission of peace. When they emerged at the edge of the Sol system, Fleet Commander HFY expected to find a primitive civilization, cowering before his magnificent fleet. Instead, his sensors immediately detected something that made his metallic form ring with alarm. "Contact," reported his tactical officer. "Multiple vessels approaching our position." "How many?" HFY asked. "Unknown. Sensors are detecting active stealth systems. Estimate minimum 50 vessels, possibly more." "Stealth systems?" HFY was confused. Why would a primitive species develop stealth technology? Before anyone could answer, space around the Confederation fleet began to fill with ships. They didn't arrive through hyperspace or drop out of warp. They simply appeared as their stealth systems disengaged, revealing that they had been waiting in ambush positions throughout the system. "New contacts," the tactical officer reported with growing alarm. 100, 150, 200 vessels and climbing. HFY stared at the tactical display in shock. The human ships were nothing like the elegant vessels of his fleet. They were angular, brutal-looking machines that seemed designed for one purpose: war. Their hulls were covered in armor plating and weapon systems. These were not the crude ships Veltar had described. "Communications incoming," reported his communications officer. The main screen activated, showing a human female in military uniform. HFY recognized her from Veltar's reports. "Admiral Sarah Chen, Fleet Commander HFY," she said calmly. "This is Admiral Chen of the Terran Defense Force. You are in violation of human territorial space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." HFY recovered his composure. Despite their numbers, these were still primitive aliens facing the combined might of the Confederation. "Admiral Chen," he replied. "I am Fleet Commander HFY of the Galactic Confederation. We have come to provide protective intervention for your species. Surrender immediately and no harm will come to your people." Chen's expression didn't change. "This is your final warning, Commander. Withdraw from our space or we will remove you by force. You dare threaten the Confederation?" HFY's voice rang with metallic indignation. "We represent 12 advanced species. You are outnumbered and outgunned." "Are we?" Chen asked. "Computer tactical assessment." A new voice spoke from her ship's speakers. "Confederation fleet 300 vessels. Primarily exploration and transport designs converted for peacekeeping operations. Estimated weapons yield moderate. Armor rating light. Combat experience minimal. Terran fleet 212 vessels. Purpose-built military designs. Estimated weapons yield high. Armor rating heavy. Combat experience extensive." Chen looked directly at HFY. "Commander, your ships are beautiful. Ours are functional. I suggest you consider the difference." HFY cut the communication channel and turned to his tactical officer. "Are their weapons really superior to ours?" The officer studied his displays nervously. "Sir, their energy signatures are concerning. Their ships appear to be carrying fusion warheads, particle beam weapons, and kinetic projectiles at velocities we've never encountered." "Impossible. We have the most advanced technology in the galaxy." "Sir," another officer interrupted, "we're receiving surrender demands from the human fleet. They're giving us 10 minutes to begin withdrawal or they'll open fire." HFY's metallic form rang with anger. "The arrogance." Signal Alge, the battle lasted exactly 47 minutes. When it was over, Fleet Commander HFY found himself sitting in the wreckage of his command center, staring at a tactical display that showed the complete destruction of his fleet. Not one human ship had been destroyed. 73 Confederation vessels were gone, reduced to expanding clouds of debris. The remaining ships were crippled, their weapons offline and their engines disabled. HFY's own flagship was held motionless by human tractor beams while damage control teams struggled to restore basic life support. "Sir," his communications officer reported with a voice full of shock, "the humans are demanding our surrender." Admiral Chen's image appeared on the main screen again. Behind her, HFY could see human crew members working calmly at their stations. There was no sign of battle damage on her ship. "Commander HFY," she said in the same calm tone she had used before the battle, "do you wish to continue this engagement, or are you ready to discuss terms?" HFY's metallic body had lost its shine and now appeared dull gray. "How?" he whispered. "How is this possible?" "Your species have forgotten how to fight," Chen replied simply. "You've spent so long in peace that you've forgotten what war actually means." She activated a display showing the recent battle. "Your ships moved in predictable formations. Your weapons were designed to disable rather than destroy. Your tactics assumed that we would retreat when faced with superior numbers." The display zoomed in on specific moments of the battle. "Our ships are smaller than yours, but they're built to survive in combat. Our weapons are designed to kill enemy vessels as quickly as possible. Our tactics assume that the enemy is trying to kill us and will use any means necessary to do so." HFY watched in horrified fascination as the display showed how thoroughly his fleet had been outmaneuvered. The humans had used their superior speed and maneuverability to attack from unexpected angles. They had concentrated their firepower to destroy ships rather than merely disable them. Most shocking of all, they had shown no hesitation about killing their enemies. "You destroyed those ships," he said in disbelief. "There were thousands of beings on those vessels." "Yes," Chen replied without emotion. "They were trying to conquer our people. We stopped them, but you could have disabled them instead. Why would we handicap ourselves in battle? This isn't a training exercise, Commander. You came here to force us into submission. We defended ourselves." HFY's mind struggled to process this alien concept. In Confederation space, conflicts were resolved through negotiation or, at worst, symbolic demonstrations of force. The idea of actually killing enemy combatants was barbaric. "What do you want?" he asked weakly. "Unconditional surrender of all remaining Confederation forces," Chen replied. "Your surviving ships and crews will be treated according to the laws of war, but you will remain as prisoners until this situation is resolved. And then you're going home with a message for your council." 6 hours later, HFY found himself aboard a human ship that was completely unlike anything in Confederation space. Where Confederation vessels were designed to be beautiful and comfortable, this human ship was purely functional. Every surface was covered in armor plating or weapon systems. The corridors were narrow and cramped, designed to be easily defended. Emergency equipment was stored in every compartment. Admiral Chen met him in what she called a briefing room. The chamber was sparse and utilitarian, with wall displays showing the locations of human and Confederation forces throughout the region. "Commander," she began without preamble, "you're going to return to your council with detailed technical specifications of human military capabilities. You're also going to carry a complete tactical analysis of how easily your fleet was defeated." She activated a holographic display showing the recent battle from multiple angles. "Your council needs to understand that humanity is not like the other species they've encountered. We don't surrender when faced with superior numbers. We don't back down when threatened. And we don't fight to disable our enemies. We fight to win." HFY studied the display with growing horror. The tactical analysis was devastating. It showed how every Confederation advantage had been neutralized by human tactics and technology. This data will prove that any future Confederation attack on human space will result in the complete destruction of the attacking force, Chen continued. "Your people simply don't know how to fight a real war." "What if the Council decides to send a larger fleet?" HFY asked. Chen smiled grimly. "Then they'll lose a larger fleet. Commander, your Confederation controls 12 species because those species chose submission over resistance. Humanity chooses resistance." She changed the display to show human territory. "We've been expanding for 2 centuries. We have colonies on 43 worlds, space-based manufacturing facilities throughout our territory, and alliance agreements with 8 other species. More importantly, we have a military doctrine based on actual combat experience." "Combat experience?" "We've fought 3 interstellar wars in the past 50 years, Commander. We've defended against alien invasions, conquered hostile species that threatened our colonies, and conducted military operations across dozens of star systems. Your Confederation has existed in peace for thousands of years. Which of us do you think is better prepared for warfare?" HFY's metallic form dimmed further. "What do you want from the Confederation?" "Recognition of human sovereignty and territorial claims. Establishment of formal diplomatic relations between equals. And a promise that the Confederation will never again attempt to impose its authority on human space. The Council will never agree to treat a single species as equal to the Confederation. Then The Council will learn what happens when an irresistible force meets an immovable object, Chen replied. We're not asking for their permission, Commander. We're informing them of the new reality. She stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at the wreckage of the Confederation fleet drifting in space. Your people created a peaceful civilization by eliminating everyone who might disturb that peace. But you can't eliminate us. We're too strong, too widespread, and too stubborn to be conquered. So what happens now? Chen turned back to face him. Now you go home and tell your council that humanity is offering them a choice. They can accept us as equals and work toward mutual cooperation, or they can continue to threaten us and face the consequences. And if they choose war, then we'll give them a war they'll never forget, Chen said quietly. But I hope they're smarter than that. The galaxy is big enough for all of us, Commander. There's no reason we can't coexist peacefully. As equals, as equals. 3 days later, the surviving ships of HFY's fleet limped away from the Sol system, carrying news that would shake the Confederation to its foundations. Behind them, human warships returned to their patrol routes, ready for whatever came next. Admiral Chen stood on the observation deck of her flagship, watching the alien ships disappear into hyperspace. Her aide approached with a datapad. Admiral, should we prepare for a larger Confederation response? Chen considered the question. Probably. But I don't think they'll make the same mistake twice. They'll either accept the new situation or escalate dramatically. And if they escalate, then we'll show them why humans conquered this region of space in the first place, Chen replied. But I suspect they're smarter than that. Once they understand what they're really facing, I think they'll choose diplomacy over destruction. She was right. But it would take one more demonstration to convince them. The emergency session of the Confederation Council had been in continuous debate for 3 days. Fleet Commander HFY's report lay before them like a bomb that had already exploded, its implications still sending shockwaves through everything they thought they knew about galactic civilization. This cannot be accurate, insisted Speaker Thalnos for the 100th time, his plant-like form trembling with agitation. One species cannot defeat the combined forces of 12 advanced civilizations. The tactical data is conclusive, replied Counselor Zixana, her energy form pulsing with troubled patterns. Their weapons technology exceeds our own by several generations. Their ships are purpose-built for warfare in ways our vessels never were. Council Prime Yethmor had remained silent through most of the debate, studying the devastating reports from the battle. Finally he spoke. Fleet Commander HFY, in your professional opinion, what would be required to defeat these humans in open warfare? HFY's metallic form had not regained its shine since returning from Sol system. Honored Prime, based on what I observed, I believe it would require our entire combined fleet, every ship from every member species, and even then, victory would not be guaranteed. The council chamber erupted in shocked exclamations. The idea that their entire civilization might be threatened by a single species was unthinkable. Surely you exaggerate, protested High Speaker Morden. They are still just one world. No, honored speaker. They control 43 colony worlds, orbital habitats throughout their territory, and have formal alliances with 8 other species. They are not just one world. They are a fully developed interstellar civilization. War Speaker Koldash leaned forward aggressively. Then we crush them before they can expand further. Every day we delay, they grow stronger. With what? HFY asked bluntly. Honored War Speaker, most of our member species maintain only token military forces. The central fleet I commanded represented the majority of our combat-capable vessels. It was destroyed in less than an hour. Then we mobilize everything, Koldash insisted. Refit civilian ships, activate reserve forces, recall every vessel to duty. And then what? Asked Counselor Fexali, speaking for the first time since the debate began. Suppose we do manage to destroy the humans. What happens to the other species in their region? The ones they have alliances with? They submit to Confederation authority as they should, Thalnos replied. Or they fight alongside the humans, Fexali countered. HFY's report indicates that several of these species have military capabilities comparable to our own. If they unite against us, the implications hung in the air like a poisonous cloud. The Confederation had maintained peace by avoiding exactly this kind of situation. They had never faced a coalition of militaristic species working together. Council Prime Yethmor called for order. We face a fundamental question about the nature of our civilization. For thousands of years, we have brought peace to this region of space by integrating primitive species into our orderly society. Now we encounter a species that not only rejects our authority but has the power to resist it. Then we must find a way to defeat them, Koldash declared. Or, Yethmor continued, we must find a way to coexist with them. The chamber fell silent. The idea of coexistence with an independent military power was completely alien to Confederation thinking. You cannot be serious, Thalnos said finally. The very foundation of our civilization is the principle of unified authority. If we allow one species to remain independent, others will demand the same privilege. Perhaps they should have that privilege, Fexali said quietly. The words fell like stones into still water, creating ripples that spread throughout the chamber. Several council members began speaking at once, their voices rising in alarm and outrage. Order, Yethmor commanded. Councillor Fexali, explain your statement. The aquatic being's form shimmered in her containment field. I have been studying the historical records of our expansion. In every case where we encountered resistance, we interpreted it as evidence of primitive thinking that required correction. But what if we were wrong? Wrong? Speaker Thalnos rustled indignantly. Our civilization has brought peace and prosperity to billions of beings. Yes, Fexali agreed. But at what cost? How many unique cultures have we absorbed? How many different ways of thinking have we eliminated? What if diversity of thought and approach is valuable in itself? Diversity leads to conflict, Morden stated flatly. Unity brings peace, does it? Fexali activated a display showing Confederation territory. Look at our borders. For the past 500 years, we have expanded only into regions where we encounter primitive or peaceful species. We have avoided areas where we detect advanced military activity. Why? Because we are peaceful people who avoid unnecessary conflict, Thalnos replied. Or because we have forgotten how to deal with equals, Fexali suggested. We have created a peaceful empire by ensuring that everyone we encounter is weaker than we are. War Speaker Koldash's armored form clanked as he stood. These philosophical debates are irrelevant. The humans have humiliated the Confederation. If we do not respond decisively, our entire authority structure will collapse. What do you propose? Yethmor asked. Full mobilization. Every ship, every species, everything we have. One massive strike to eliminate the human threat permanently. And if we lose? Fexali asked. We cannot lose. The combined might of 12 species cannot be defeated by one. Fleet Commander HFY, Yethmor said formally. In your professional opinion, what would be the likely outcome of such an engagement? HFY was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with defeat. Honored Prime, the humans have been preparing for this kind of warfare for centuries. Their ships, their tactics, their entire military philosophy is designed for conflicts against equally advanced opponents. We have not fought a real war in over 1,000 years. That's not an answer, Koldash pressed. Yes, it is, HFY replied. Honored War Speaker, in my estimation, a full Confederation assault on human space would result in the destruction of our entire combined fleet and the collapse of our government. The chamber erupted again. Several council members began shouting accusations of cowardice and defeatism. Others demanded immediate action regardless of the cost. Through it all, Council Prime Yethmor sat in thoughtful silence. Finally, he called for order again. We will recess for individual consultation. All council members will consider 3 options: full military mobilization against the humans, formal recognition of human independence, or some form of negotiated compromise. We will reconvene in 6 hours to make our final decision. As the council members dispersed, Yethmor remained in his seat, staring at the tactical analysis of humanity's victory. The data was clear. The humans had not just defeated a Confederation fleet. They had done so while taking no significant casualties themselves. It was the kind of tactical superiority that spoke of centuries of warfare against competent opponents. 6 hours later, the council reconvened. The debate was shorter this time, but no less intense. I have consulted with military advisors from my homeworld, Koldash announced. They agree that full mobilization offers our best chance of success. We may take heavy casualties, but the humans cannot stand against our combined fleets. And I have consulted with our historians, Fexali replied. They remind me that every previous species that challenged our authority was significantly weaker than we were. The humans are not. One by one, the council members stated their positions. The vote was close, 6 in favor of military action, 5 in favor of negotiation with 1 abstention. The motion carries, Yethmore announced heavily. Fleet mobilization will begin immediately. But before the orders could be transmitted, an aide rushed into the chamber with an urgent message. Honored Council, the aide announced breathlessly. We have received a diplomatic communication from the human government. What do they want? Kaldash demanded. They are requesting a formal meeting to discuss diplomatic relations between the Confederation and humanity. The arrogance, Thalnos exclaimed. They defeat one fleet and think they can dictate terms to us. Actually, the aide continued nervously, they're offering to send their representative to Harmony Station under full diplomatic immunity. They want to discuss formal recognition of both governments as sovereign equals. Council Prime Yethmore felt something he had never experienced before. Respect for an opponent. They're not trying to dictate terms. They're offering to negotiate as equals. Impossible, Kaldash stated. We do not negotiate with subordinate species. They're not subordinate, Fexali observed. That's the point. Yethmore made his decision. We will meet with their representative. But the fleet mobilization continues. If negotiations fail, we will be ready to settle this matter militarily. 3 days later, a single human ship arrived at Harmony Station. It was smaller than most Confederation vessels, but heavily armed and armored. The ship's configuration made it clear that it was designed to fight its way out of any situation. The human representative was Admiral Chen herself. She walked through the halls of Harmony Station with the calm confidence of someone who held all the high cards. Her small diplomatic escort was composed of obvious military personnel who scanned everything with professional paranoia.